welcome to Davar Word. It is my pleasure to share with you what I have discovered in my walk so that we can learn and grow together. Today, I would like to discuss the trial of the Sotah, the woman suspected by her husband of adultery. In Israel, if a man felt jealous about his wife's behavior and actions, he had to bring his wife to the priest and have the matter resolved by a higher authority, instead of taking things into his own hands. It was a serious accusation to bring her before the priest, and therefore prevented honor killing of women on baseless accusations. The woman who is accused is called the Sotah. Let me read out the passage. Numbers chapter 5 verses 11 to 31. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Yisrael and say to them, suppose some man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, and another man has sexual relations with her, but it is hidden from her husband's eyes, and her impurity is not detected. Yet there was no witness against her, and she was not caught in the act. Then a spirit of jealousy overcomes him, and he is suspicious of his wife when she is impure. Or a spirit of jealousy overcomes him, and he suspects his wife, yet she is not impure. Then he should take his wife to the Kohen. He must also bring 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour as an offering for her. He is not to pour oil or put incense on it, because it is an offering for jealousy, a reminder offering, drawing attention to guiltiness. The Kohen is to bring her near and have her stand before Adonai. Then the Kohen is to take some holy water in a clay jar and take some dust from the floor of the tabernacle and put it into the water. Then the Kohen will have the woman stand before Adonai, loosen the woman's hair, put into her hands the reminder offering, the offering for jealousy, while in the Kohen's own hands are the bitter waters that bring a curse. Then the Kohen will have her swear under oath, then say to the woman, "If no man other than your husband has slept with you, and if you have not gone astray into impurity from your husband, may this bitter water that brings a curse not harm you. If, however, you have gone astray from your husband, and if you became impure and had sexual relations with a man other than your husband, then the Kohen is to have the woman swear under this oath of a curse, and say to the woman, 'Then let Adonai cause you to be cursed and denounced among your people, when Adonai causes your thigh to rot and your belly to swell. May this water which brings a curse enter your body and cause your belly to swell and your thigh to rot.' The woman is to say, 'Amen, Amen.' Then the Kohen is to write these curses on a scroll and wash them into the waters of bitterness. The Kohen will then have the woman drink the bitter water, bearing curses, so that the water of the curses of bitterness enters her. The Kohen is to take the jealousy offering from the woman's hand, wave the offering before Adonai, and bring it to the altar. The Kohen is to take a handful of the grain offering and burn it up in smoke on the altar as a memorial offering. The Kohen will then have the woman drink the water. When she is made to drink the water that carries the curse, if she has defiled herself and been unfaithful to her husband, it will enter her and cause bitterness. Her abdomen will swell and her thigh will waste away. She will be accursed among her people. If, however, the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, she will be free from guilt and be able to have children. This is the Torah regarding jealousy, when a woman goes astray from her husband and defiles herself, or when a spirit of jealousy comes over a man and he jealously suspects his wife. The Kohen is to have her stand before Adonai and apply this entire Torah to her. The husband will be free of guilt, but that woman will bear her guilt. In many countries, it is permissible for a jealous husband to simply murder his wife in the name of his honor and his family honor, for any reason at all. If she goes out alone, if she dresses, walks, or talks in an inappropriate way, in his perspective. In Israel, the instruction of the Sotah saved many women who were innocent, yet falsely accused because of the wrath of a jealous husband. The key verses are verses 13 and 14, which describe that another man has sexual relations with her, but it is hidden from her husband's eyes, and her impurity is not detected. Yet, there are no witnesses against her, and she was not caught in the act. Then a spirit of jealousy overcomes her husband, and he is suspicious of his wife when she is impure. Or perhaps a spirit of jealousy overcomes him, and he suspects his wife, yet she is innocent and not impure. The situation is such that there were no witnesses, and she was not caught in the act. There is absolutely no evidence, no proof. It is only the husband who has a spirit of jealousy. The classic suspicious situation is one in which a woman is secluded with a man. The Sotah, the trial of the bitter water outlined in Numbers 5, would miraculously reveal whether a woman was guilty of adultery. This trial, carried out by the priest, could be demanded by her husband, merely on the basis that she was alone with a man. In Numbers 5 verse 15, note that the husband is the one bringing the offering. He has to pay for that ritual. The husband shall bring the offering required for her. The jealous husband was the one to bring a certain amount of barley meal. He must not pour oil on the offering. Oil symbolizes abundance and riches. He must not put incense on the offering, meaning that the offering must not be given together with sweet fragrance. It was just a plain and simple offering, because it was not one given with joy and thanksgiving. This offering was given for the purpose of remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance. This offering was bitter, because the wife would either be found guilty of adultery, or the husband would be found guilty of unfounded suspicion. The whole community would be reminded of the terrible nature of either adultery or false accusation. In Numbers 5 verse 17, the dust from the floor of the tabernacle is mixed into the holy water in a clay jar, reminding us that man is made from earth and dust, signifying that humanity is indeed fallen. The priest collected dust from the floor of the tabernacle and mixed it with holy water. Numbers 5 verse 18 says that the woman would hold the grain offering in her hand as a reminder of her fellowship with God, while the priest pronounced an oath over the woman. Culturally, when an Israelite woman is married, she has her hair covered. The priest would uncover the woman's head to unbind and let down her hair. It was a sign of shame and humiliation for the woman. This is the offering for jealousy, because there was never any proof except that the husband was feeling possessive and jealous over unfounded suspicion. According to Numbers 5 verse 19, the woman swears under oath. This is the moment she had better confess if she was guilty. If the woman was innocent of the accusation of adultery, she would be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if she was in fact guilty of adultery, she would be under the curse. Verse 21 tells us that the name of Adonai is uttered twice in the oath. The woman says, Amen, Amen. She affirms this in agreement twice. She knows that she had better not lie under oath using the name of Adonai. She had to agree that if she was innocent, she deserved vindication. But if guilty, she deserved the punishment of the curse. Verse 23 tells us that the priest would write the curses on a scroll. The ink on the scroll containing those curses would be scraped and washed into the holy water and dust mixture. This became the bitter water that would be drunk by the woman, and it would expose her guilt or innocence. This was something almost unheard of in Israel, for God's name must never be blotted out or washed away. But here, God Himself is willing to put down His name as a guarantor. He was willing to let His name be blotted out in defense of an innocent woman. The curse was to make her thigh rot and her belly swell. This is euphemistic to describe that her reproductive organs and her pelvis would drop and her belly would burst if she were to be found guilty. A woman accused by her husband of adultery must drink this specially prepared liquid that would determine whether or not the accusation was true. The priest would offer the grain offering. In Numbers 5 verse 26, the accused woman drinks the bitter water. To this point, if the woman was courageous enough to drink the water, it definitely showed her innocence, because it was a scary thing to be under the curse of God. It will scare a guilty woman into a confession before drinking the waters, or convince a suspicious husband of his wife's actual innocence, thereby enabling a reconciliation. The judgment of God would be evident. If her womb would swell, it would be seen as evidence of her guilt. But if she was free from the curse, she would become fertile and bear children. It would be seen as her vindication. It seems that the ritual would punish the guilty with miscarriage or infertility and vindicate the innocent with fertility. The punishment of a guilty woman was only in the hand of God. Punishment would not be carried out by her husband or even the priest. If a woman was innocent, it was known to the entire community. If a woman is suspected of adultery, this poses a danger to her because she is the only party involved in the ritual who actually knows what happened. Mishnah Sotah 3:4 describes that a guilty woman hardly finishes drinking until her face turns yellow and her eyes bulge and her veins swell, and they say, take her away, so that she not defile the court. Mishnah Sotah 5:1, in explaining how the Sotah waters function, just as the water acts upon her, so does it act upon him. The male adulterer would suffer the same fate as the married woman he had the affair with. It seems that the ceremony had some supernatural element involved when a woman drank water with dust and ink. She would experience lots of mental stress if she was guilty and yet chose not to confess but deny the act. This was a public ceremony, and it made the entire community aware of the evil of adultery and the serious consequences of trying to hide sin. The ceremony itself was a deterrent to unfaithfulness in marriage, and therefore it was good for the entire nation to have the fear of Adonai. The instruction of the Sotah Trial was to promote faithfulness in marriage and to set marriages free from jealousy and suspicion. Numbers 5 verse 31 says that the husband will be free of guilt, but that woman shall suffer for her guilt. What does that mean? The offering must be understood in relation to him and his jealousy, not in relation to her and her sin. The guilt is not about the adultery, but the guilt that a woman creates in her husband and causing his jealousy through her speech and behavior. If the woman is found guilty, her guilt for the adultery is never atoned for, never forgiven. She can never bring any sin offering or guilt offering to obtain forgiveness. She must keep on carrying her guilt forever, all her days. The ritual frees only the husband from any guilt of jealousy. Note that the verse never refers to it as his guilt. Why does it say the man is free from iniquity? The simple meaning of the verse is that by bringing his wife for the test, he is free from the iniquity of remaining with a woman who is an adulteress. It can be suggested, however, that this Sotah trial was instituted to prevent honor killing, which is a horror prevalent in many parts of the world to this day. Honor killing allows a husband or a male relative who suspects immorality in a wife, sister, or daughter to kill her without any trial. The Sotah trial was introduced so that the accuser cannot act unilaterally without accountability. The matter is transferred to the authority of the priest, who organizes a complex investigation of the suspected woman and lets God give the answer. The Sotah trial protects the woman if she is innocent. If she is guilty of adultery, if she was caught in the act of adultery, she would be stoned together with the man with whom she had committed adultery. This would call for a death sentence. Without witnesses catching her in the act, there can be no punishment for evident or proven forbidden sexual intercourse. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 10 says, "The man who commits adultery with another man's wife, who commits adultery with his friend's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death." Deuteronomy chapter 22 verses 21 to 22 says, "They are to bring the young woman out to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city are to stone her with stones to death, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to behave like a prostitute in her father's house. So you are to purge the evil from your midst. Suppose a man is found lying with a married woman, then both of them are to die, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. So you are to purge the evil from Israel." In the case of the Sotah trial, the issue here is not suspected cheating. Rather, the case is that the husband suspects cheating and he is feeling jealous. The priests need to deal justly with the jealousy and the accusation. If the husband has suspicions but not solid evidence, it was permissible to end the marriage with divorce. So, why not divorce her? Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 1 says that when a man takes a wife and possesses her, if she fails to please him because he finds something obnoxious about her, and he writes her a bill of divorcement, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. And yet, instead of writing her a sefer kritut, or certificate of divorce, the husband takes his wife to the priests to perform the Sotah ritual. A Sotah is forbidden to her husband. A union with a defiled woman can affect the man, who will himself be defiled by his relations with her. This is the same reason used to explain why a man who divorces his wife may not remarry her if she has been with another man. Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 4. Then the first husband who divorced her shall not take her to wife again, since she has been defiled, for that would be abhorrent to Adonai. Once the Sotah trial has proven the suspected woman to be innocent, she becomes permitted to her husband once again. As Numbers chapter 5 verse 31 describes, he would then be free of any guilt or sin. Sotah 28a in the Talmud says, if the woman's husband was himself unfaithful and he wanted to accuse her, the waters would be inoperative. Sotah 9:9 in the Talmud declares that after the destruction of the temple and as society changed, the Sotah rituals were entirely suspended by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai after the destruction of the second temple. God says in Hosea chapter 4 verse 14, I will not punish your daughters for prostitution or your daughters-in-law for adultery. For the men themselves consort with prostitutes, and they sacrifice with cult prostitutes. A people without understanding will be thrust down. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 13 talks about those who turn away from God or are unfaithful to God will be written in the dust because they have forsaken the Lord, who is the spring of living water. Lord, you are the hope of Israel. All who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away from you will be written in the dust because they have forsaken the Lord, the spring of living water. Now, what if the woman goes through the Sotah ritual and she is proven to be innocent and her womb does not drop? It is her husband who bears the humiliation because he had a spirit of jealousy for no reason. Or, what if the woman goes through the Sotah ritual and her womb does drop? Her husband now has a wife who is unable to bear him children. Either way, it does not work out well for the husband. He would be better off investigating properly for more evidence or solving the issue at home. Both the husband and wife should work it out together in love and forgiveness. Otherwise, the both of them would suffer humiliation in a very public manner. Would the husband really be free regardless of the outcome of the ritual? In John chapter 8 verse 3, the Torah scholars and Pharisees bring in to the temple courts a woman who had been caught in adultery. After putting her in the middle, they say to Yeshua, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of committing adultery. In the Torah, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? Now, they were saying this to trap him, so that they would have grounds to accuse him. Yeshua bent down and started writing on the ground. He was reminding them of the Sotah trial. His silence confronted them with a few questions. The woman's guilt did not need to be proven. She had been caught, so they said, in the act. Where was the woman's husband? Where was the one she was committing adultery with, since the group had declared that this woman was caught in the act itself? If there was no man caught together with her, had they given her a fair Sotah trial? Yeshua knew that they were trying to trap him in order to have a basis for accusing him. In that moment, when time stood still, both Yeshua and the woman were being trapped by the same group of Torah scholars and Pharisees. Yeshua was using the ground as his scroll. Yeshua was the living water embodied in a human body, a jar of clay, mixing with the dust of the temple courts. Sotah is to clear an innocent woman from suspicion. When we understand the context of the Sotah Trial, we would be amazed that God was so concerned about defending a woman's innocence that the process involved wiping out the name of God twice, something strictly forbidden under other circumstances. God was willing to renounce his own honor, allowing his name to be scrubbed off twice in order to save an innocent woman from suspicion. The Code of Hammurabi is a Babylonian legal text composed during 1755 to 1750 BC. It is the longest, best organized and best preserved legal text from the ancient Near East, written in the Old Babylonian dialect of Akkadian, purportedly by Hammurabi, the sixth king of the first dynasty of Babylon. It states concerning that a presumed unfaithful woman was to undergo the ordeal of trial by death by flinging herself into the sacred Euphrates River. If she were guilty, it was presumed she would drown. If innocent, she would survive the ordeal and would be able to return to her husband with no attachment of guilt. Therefore, the laws of Hammurabi would resolve the question this way. If a man's wife should have a finger pointed at her in accusation involving another male, although she has not been seized lying with another male, she shall submit to the divine river ordeal for her husband. According to this law, the woman's guilt or innocence is proven by jumping into the river under the control of the river god Id. If she drowns, she is guilty. If she survives, she is innocent. Her survival or death is not a factor of her ability to swim or the power of the current, but a reflection of the will of the river god. Therefore, a son of Israel was not to do whatever he likes with his wife. If he is overcome by a spirit of jealousy, he would not be allowed to beat his wife or to kill her on the basis of unfounded suspicion. Israel is God's wife. The marriage was at Mount Sinai. God married the nation of Israel. They said their vows, and there was a ketubah, also known as the 10 words. God knew ahead of time that Israel would be unfaithful to her husband. God knew that Israel would chase after other lovers, practice idolatry, and worship other gods. This made God very jealous. One of the names of God is Elkanah, the jealous God. He did not want to be defiled by Israel's defilement, and yet God also did not want to divorce Israel either. God made Israel drink the bitter water at Marah. In Exodus chapter 15 verses 23 to 25, when they came to Marah, they could not drink from the waters because they were bitter. On account of this, it was called Marah. So the people complained to Moses, saying, "What are we going to drink?" So he cried out to Adonai, and Adonai showed him a tree. When he threw it into the waters, they were made sweet. Israel went through the Sotah ritual. Adonai provided the etz, the tree. When Moses threw it into the waters, they were made sweet, and the people drank. Notice that in verse 25, the name of Adonai is mentioned twice, just like in the curses of the Sotah trial, but this time making the waters sweet. Even for Gentiles who come from the nations with their past steeped in idolatry, Galatians chapter 3 verses 13 to 14 says, Messiah liberated us from Torah's curse, having become a curse for us. For it is written, Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree, in order that through Messiah Yeshua, the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles, so we might receive the promise of the Ruach through trusting faith. Messiah hung on the tree and became a curse for us, so that through him the blessing of Abraham might come to those of the nations and receive the Ruach because they believe. This one act of love by Messiah reversed the curse forever and shattered the power of the devil to kill, steal, and destroy. This one act of love also paved the way for God's blessing to be upon everyone that would obey his word by faith, Jew or Gentile. We have a promise to be blessed in everything that we do according to his name. We have a promise to be empowered to prosper in the covenant promises of God. We are redeemed from the curse of the law of sin and death so that we can walk in boldness, wisdom, favor, strength, and have victory over the power of sin and death every single day of our lives. The knowledge of this truth gives us back all that was stolen from us by the adversary. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed our time together. Thank you for joining me. I pray that this message inspires and challenges you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.